Live from WRCT Studios in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, the Total Education Hour, the talk shop for teachers, parents, and administrators. Here's your host of the show, Neil Haley, the Total Tutor.
I can't believe it's been a week. It's gone so fast. I am tutoring from 8 o'clock in the morning all the way to 7 o'clock at night with appointments. Swamped, also doing my publicity, booking guests across the country, promoting the brand of the Total Education Network. Again, I'm the host of the show, Neil Haley, the Total Tutor. Please go to my website at www.totaltutor.org to learn more about what's going on. We are going to be on another internet channel. I'll let you know very soon in the process of negotiating that. All right, so now, such jam-packed hour of education talk. I'd like to welcome my co-host, Darcy Hyman, to the program. How are you, Darcy?
I'm fantastic, Neil. Thanks. How are you?
I'm doing well. And then you had brought someone from parts unknown. Her name is Lisa. That's all I have to say is Lisa. And she's a teacher. Mm-hmm. So our first guest, I don't know if he's on the line yet, is another one that's incognito that, again, we don't know your name, except when Ken Pettigrew had to try to end your name. But let's welcome the frustrated teacher of the line. How are you, TFT?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's awesome. And now you have a segment now that we're going to have once a month on the Total Education Hour, and then you'll be coming to the Total Education Network. But why are you frustrated? That's what the audience wants to know.
Well, I, along with probably millions of other teachers, are frustrated with the trajectory of the reform movement because it seems to us that its aims are not to help any kids, but rather to privatize public education. They're making all kinds of claims that are easily refutable, and that's very frustrating.
All right, so I'm going to let the panel open up, and if I don't see that they're ready to ask a question, I'll ask the first question to kind of lead it off. Now, you're frustrated because of this. What is this reform movement? Why is it such a problem here? And I'll let you know, TFT, you're not going to be happy with me because I did start a show on the CB Media Network, and it's going to air tonight at 8 o'clock on Blog Talk. And if you talk to me after that, well, then, but I did definitely put my conservative view onto it, so you have to listen today at 8 o'clock. Eastern, as I am now part of the CB Media Network as well. But okay, so the question I have to ask, why is this such a problem?
Why is what such a problem? The lies and obfuscation, or you want me to just talk generally?
No, just the reform movement in general.
Okay. For a report was written 60 some odd years ago, the Coleman report, and in that report, the report was done because people were trying to figure out why certain subsets of populations were not performing as well as other subsets in school. So the Coleman report came to the conclusion that poverty seems to be, or should I say, socioeconomic status of the parents of these students were the only correlate for performance, the only correlate with any meat. In other words, somewhere between 60 and 90% of factors influencing a child's ability to learn come from outside the school. Teachers have known this forever. Teachers, especially inner city and rural teachers who deal with impoverished populations, know exactly which kids are going to have a harder time in class, and it's the impoverished ones. And I can get into why that is, but I'll save that.
So
because of this knowledge that we have, and we've had it for decades and decades and decades, and every researcher since that time has been able to replicate that, we know poverty is the biggest problem affecting the struggling kids in our schools, and the reform movement refuses to even acknowledge it. In fact, the president's spokesman told me personally that education is the best way to lift people out of poverty, except that hasn't worked here in America, ever. because it's not entirely true. It's not that our kids don't have any education. It's that before they ever start school, these impoverished kids have to contend with a life that affects them physically, affects brain development, not only physically, but non-physical effects. You know, they just have less information when they start kindergarten than your kid or my kid had. I taught kindergarten for years, and I can tell you that some kids start kindergarten already reading, and other kids wouldn't know the letter B if you threw it at their head.
But that's like everywhere, TFT, not just the impoverished kids.
No, that's absolutely not everywhere.
That is the case.
If you want to talk about, you know, outliers and so on, fine, sure, there's outliers everywhere. Statistics don't work based on the outliers. If you want to look at the aggregate numbers, you can very, very easily see that impoverished neighborhoods have low test scores, affluent neighborhoods have high test scores, and the reason for that is affluent families have the ability to sing to their kids and read to their kids and be with their kids and spend time with their kids and take them to the zoo and send them to camp and send them to preschool and do all those things that middle class and wealthier people are able to do. In the impoverished neighborhoods, you know, kids are dodging bullets. They may have no parent in the home. There may just be an older sibling there because the parent has 3 jobs. Or even a worst-case scenario, the parents are just absent or irresponsible. That happens frequently in impoverished neighborhoods, more frequently than in affluent neighborhoods because the irresponsible affluent parents pay for a nanny.
Now, Darcy has a question, definitely. I know she does.
I do. Hey, TFT, how are you?
Good, thanks. How are you?
Good. Okay, I'm really glad that you did bring up that there are irresponsible, wealthy parents also that will pay for a nanny. But there are a lot of parents out there who are wealthy or middle class or what have you who are not there for their children, who the kids are still latchkey kids. They're still kids who come home to nothing. It may be a nicer house, and maybe, yeah, they might have a nanny. I know personally I worked for some people who had nannies, and some of them had a few. And having a situation like that, honestly, I think the kid was better off on his own. So many different individuals coming in and trying to raise this child. He didn't know right from wrong because so many people had come in and out of his life and said, no, this is right, no, this is right, no, this is wrong. I mean, to the point that I'm really not seeing how that's a better situation.
Well,
I think
that's one kid.
Well, it's not just one. I'm saying this happens often.
No, that's not true. It doesn't happen often.
Well,
it happens far less frequently in middle class, upper middle class, and wealthy families.
I don't agree. I don't think that's true. I mean,
Well,
there's a reason why they became wealthy.
Well, I know it's true. There are numbers.
Okay.
There
well, what are the numbers? I love numbers.
If you look, do you want education numbers? You look at the NAEP, and we see that for
I'm not talking about education numbers,
okay,
because I know that there are students who are able to deal with situations like this.
Yeah, but those are the exceptions.
Right, and we're talking about the exceptions of the children who come home to nothing, to the wealthy parents who come.
Well, you're talking. I don't care about the exceptions. The exceptions don't really influence or shouldn't influence policy. They're exceptions. They don't.
But if we're not worrying about influences, we're also talking about the impoverished students who, as you said, were dodging bullets. Isn't this an exception also?
I'm not sure I understand what you're saying.
Well, you're saying that
I'm saying that if you go, I don't know where you live, but I'm sure wherever you live, you know where the worst part of town is.
Right.
And I'm telling you, and research bears it out, that kids growing up in that part of town have a rougher life and a harder time in school than kids growing up in whatever the wealthiest part of town is.
Right. No, I'm not arguing that.
Okay, so that's really my point. And because we know that the conditions of poverty have such a huge negative impact on these kids, my question for reformers is, why aren't you addressing it? Why are you ignoring it?
Well, what would you like for them to do?
I would like them to acknowledge that unless we as a nation deal with the abject growing child poverty problem in this country, nothing's going to change.
Okay.
You cannot send these impoverished, stifled kids to school for a longer day, they're still stifled. If you want schools to raise children and parent them, then you're going to have to fund that. But at current funding rates, we're just unable to do all the things that we need to do as teachers to remediate these kids. So what we end up doing in the classroom is we have our kids who already know everything, so we ignore them. We have to. Then we have our kids at the bottom who will never be able to raise up to the level we need them to be raised up to pass the test. So we ignore them too. And we focus on the two groups in the middle. You know, you can score a 1, 2, 3, or 4 on these tests. We ignore the 4s and the 1s. And it's explicit. Principals say it in faculty meetings. I've had it said to me, my son, who was a high 3, got sent to a test prep class because they would love for him to get a 4 to raise the school's average. So none of the reform movement's efforts do anything to help our vulnerable kids who are the ones bringing down our test scores. If you look at the international measure, the PISA, the international test scores, if you remove our our poverty schools from that measure, we are number 1 in the world, not number 17, as the media would have you believe. If you look at the NAEP, which is just the national test, for 30 years now, since the 70s, both black and white students, their scores have been rising. In fact, black students are now where white students were back in the 70s. It's more than a couple standard deviations change. Yet the gap still persists. There's still a huge gap between white and black, even though both groups' scores have gone up. And all that just leads to the conclusion that poverty, as we've known since Coleman, is the biggest predictor of school success. And if we want to affect schools or the outcomes for these students, we need to address poverty. Firing teachers, shutting down schools, opening up charter schools, giving people that doesn't do anything to help the impoverished kids.
So it'll help certain impoverished students, but not the mass.
No, it won't help any impoverished. Well, it'll help if there's a couple impoverished students who have parents that give a hoot and care and are out there looking for alternatives. It might help those kids, but I would bet that most of those kids, because their parents are out there looking, means that their parents care more, means that their parents have whatever it takes to do right by their kids. So I would assume that many of those kids would do fine anyway, just like my son is do fine.
Wait.
My son will do fine in any
So
school
guess what,
you put him
TFT?
in.
I think that you've sparked something. And the problem is that 15 minutes is not enough for the frustrated teacher. And I guess we're going to keep you on for another 15 just because this is a great discussion. If anyone wants to chime in, 412-621-9728 or 412-621-WRCT. We have to take a break, and we're going to get back with TFT. I have a couple things to address with you after your whole monologue. We'll be back in just a moment to the Total Education Hour.
And now, another adventure with Savings Man.
Let's live at the beach.
Let's golf every day.
How about a trip?
Season baseball tickets?
Sounds like you're planning for retirement.
Hey, Savings Man.
Are you saving enough?
We are, thanks to the easy ballpark estimate worksheet at choosetosave.org.
Hope you're saving for health insurance.
Absolutely, because health insurance is important. Thanks, Savings Man.
No, thank you.
So visit choosetosave.org and get your ballpark estimate today.
Leave Kathy's live most everywhere, from Zanzibar to Berkeley Square.
But Kathy's only seen the sights a girl can see from Brooklyn Heights.
What do we have here?
Oh, we're identical cousins.
But that's genetically not possible.
Oh, yes, it is. Dr. Welby told us it's quite rare, but it does happen.
Well, Dr. Welby's a great doctor, but...
You take Medicare, don't you?
Oh, sure.
And you probably have a lot of patients who are ready to go on Medicare, yes?
Yes.
You know, you could tell them that if they're 65, they can go to socialsecurity.gov and apply for Medicare online. It takes less time than sitting in a doctor's office. Sorry. It's less than 10 minutes. sometimes 5 or 6. It's quite easy.
You're really identical? And Dr. Welby really said...
We're back to the Total Education Hour again. I'm the host of the show, Neil Haley, with the Frustrated Teacher. Somehow we invited you back for another segment. Now, I have a couple things to address, first of all. The first thing is that you said that students, and I would like to ask Juan from CMU the same question, and I'd love him to debate you at one point in time, that if he would have gone to his school where Bronx teacher taught, would he end up at Carnegie Mellon? That's one question I would like to ask. And then secondly, any of the other students. So I agree with you that, yes, it's not a fair playing field. But charter schools do make a difference for the kids, parents who decide to try to do this. This is not enough, right?
No. No, you're wrong, and no, it's not enough. Charter schools, the only big, real study that was done showed that a mere 17% of charters do better. Most of them are the same or worse than traditional public schools. So no, there's absolutely nothing that would indicate that charters do better at anything. It's just not true. Plus the fact that charter schools have a self-selected group of people. Just like socioeconomic status affects, or we can sort of make pretty solid predictions about who's going to do well and who's not going to do well based on the socioeconomic status.
So let's just look at the successful charter schools, TFT, that were run by the right people. They have scored well, but you said again they cream. So what about all those? What about all of those students that are successful that came from poor socioeconomic backgrounds and were successful?
Which ones?
Which ones? Let's just talk about your good buddy Whitney Tilson's group. There are a lot of successful people that come from there.
Whitney, you mean Kip?
Yeah, Kip.
Kip is notorious
for creaming.
Not just for creaming, but for kicking out. I mean, I can look it up on my blog right now. I put up a series of charts the other day that show the size of the incoming class in 9th grade and that same class in their graduation year, and more than half of the kids are gone because they kick them out to keep their graduation rates at 100%, which is a lie, because they kick out half their kids, exactly what Jeffrey Canada did in the Harlem Children's Zone.
But what about those kids that were successful, that went on to college,
Those kids that were successful, what I'm saying is I would venture to bet, and there's no way anybody can know, but I would venture and go ahead and say that those kids, like your kid, Neil, and my kid, would probably do just fine in any school because they have us.
What? No. If I would send my kid to St. Agnes, did I say that? And I don't think that they'd be as successful as they went to St. Mary's. I'm sorry. Because of the behavior of the kids, the lack of discipline in the building, I don't think so.
My son's on the honor roll in an inner-city Title I, heavily free and reduced lunch district, and he does incredibly well, as do all of his nice, well-off friends. I'm poor as can be, but we live in a place where there's better-off people around us, and those are his friends, and they're all doing fine. Yeah, he's actually got a couple absolutely impoverished friends who are doing fine.
So it could be a good school?
That's not the majority.
Could that just be a good school?
I'm sorry?
Could that just be a good school?
No. It's a classic neighborhood. It's a college town. You've got your impoverished folks on one side of Martin Luther King Boulevard, and you've got the professors and everybody else on the other side. They all go to the same schools.
Well, I'm just going to give you this point. That's kind of like talking about Pittsburgh public schools. That there are very wealthy people in Pittsburgh public schools, and yet there are poor. But I really could tell you, if we would compare those test scores, let me give you an example. Squirrel Hill, a very affluent area. If kids that are in the honors classes at Alderdice decided to go to Westinghouse, if Westinghouse is even open anymore, I don't think they would be as successful.
Why?
Why? I'm going to tell you why. Because, again, you're going to say poverty. But you said they would be successful anyway.
I'm saying kids who have parents of high socioeconomic status, which really just means educated. You know, the best example I can give is Barack Obama. Everybody knows Barack Obama's dad left him, and he was raised by a single mom, and then kind of by his I mean, he's sort of the classic impoverished upbringing, except that both his parents were highly educated. That's why Barack Obama made it out of poverty. You know, he's a brainiac, there's that, but he also had parents that cared about education, even though they were dirt poor. So when I say poverty, I don't mean poor. I mean low socioeconomic status. And people living in generational poverty tend to also be living in generational low socioeconomic status. Very few of those families have advanced degrees or even college degrees. Many of them didn't even graduate high school. But if you go look at the affluent neighborhoods, just about every single one of those homeowners has a college degree.
Whoa.
Whoa.
Go ahead.
I have to say that I don't really agree with that.
Well, you can't not agree. It's a fact.
Well, no. Okay. But at what point does personal responsibility come in?
It comes in always, but it's
no,
very
because
hard
what
to
you're basically saying is that people who are from poorer areas aren't going to do as well, basically. And people who are from better off areas will do better.
No. I'm saying, I'm not predicting what will happen. I'm saying what has been. And based on what has been, we can extrapolate what will be. The history is that impoverished kids do poorly, affluent kids do very well. Nobody can argue with that. It's a fact. What you're saying is, why don't these impoverished kids get their whatever together and rise up out of that poverty? Well, there's millions of reasons why that's very difficult to do. Some of them are the actual physical effects of that poverty. And I don't just mean the toothaches and the sickness. I mean the changes in brain chemistry that come, post-traumatic stress syndrome type effects on these children. You know, I don't think, you know, unless you know kids like this or have spent any time with them, you know, it's kind of hard
So I know that everyone is on my panel's just thinking and saying, what are you saying? Now, TFT, this is what I'm listening to. I'm listening to that, guess what? There's a different definition between poverty and low socioeconomic status. Can you give me that definition and that difference?
Okay, they're related. Poverty is a measure of wealth. Socioeconomic status is a measure of where in our society, based on education and money, where one falls on that continuum.
Did we see this in a sociology book?
I'm sorry, this is standard sociological, these are standard sociological terms. They've been used for 80 years. They're in the literature, they're all over. When you go to some federal government website that shows you by state poverty, or where they use the words poverty, and they use the word socioeconomic status. So these are...
but they're the same thing.
No, they're not the same. Well, they're not exactly the same thing, but I was going to continue and say that impoverished people tend to be low on the socioeconomic status scale. They go hand in hand.
Okay, now, see, how would you fix our schools? And
I'm
in
not
my
sure.
diatribe that I just texted Bradley, and guess what? I want you to listen to the show, and then I want you to come back on the Total Education Network and respond to my diatribe for an hour.
Well, let me just answer. You just said, what's wrong? How are we going to reform the schools?
Yes.
My whole premise is that it's not the schools that are creating these bad test scores. It's, you know, and people take this the wrong way, but I'm just going to say it because I think you guys are smart enough to know what I mean. It's the students themselves. It's the inputs. If you're a great chef, you're not a great chef using, you know, craft and cheese food product. You're a great chef because you're able to choose the high-quality ingredients. Teachers in public school don't get to choose the ingredients of their class. They take what they get, and they got to do the best they can, which is why in the worst neighborhoods with the most violence and the most poverty / low socioeconomic socioeconomic status, you're going to have the worst performing students. It's not the school, it's not the teachers, it's not the principals, it's the kids. They need help. More help than any teacher can possibly give them in the 7 hours that they're with them. In the affluent schools, those kids don't need anything. Half of them don't even need the teacher.
So that's okay. Now that's for another time, another discussion, and I think Darcy's going to be so excited that you're going to be a contributor monthly to the Total Education Network, especially the Total Education Hour. Now, I just don't understand this, and what I'm saying is how to fix our schools. So basically, status quo.
No,
we're not going to be able ever to increase test scores. So just let the teachers be. Let them in those poverty schools. We're not going to change anything. Just let them sit there and do what they need to do. And we shouldn't blame them. We have to blame poverty.
Neil, I didn't say any of those things. Here's my stance on school reform. Ever since NCLB...
Which stinks.
Yes, we all agree that stinks.
Because there's Bill Clinton.
What?
Bill Clinton started it.
Right, it stinks because of that damn Democrat. Neil, so don't be silly now. It stinks because what it did was it narrowed the curriculum and caused everybody to teach to the test. That's why my son's principal sent him to a test prep class when he's an honors student, because she was afraid of getting her school shut down because too many of her impoverished kids don't score high enough, and her school was in trouble, was not going to meet her average yearly progress. So they stick the high-end kids in a test prep class and lied to the parents and said they know what subjects our kids need help in. Really? No. There was pure test prep.
So if the schools want to have kids coming to them that are interested kids, happy kids, curious kids, kids who are receptive to the education being provided, then we need to make school a place where kids want to go. Right now, and since NCLB, it's gotten even worse. School has been the last place anyone wants to go. But isn't it true that Republicans aren't running this?
It's not a Republican-Democrat thing. I'll tell you one thing. This privatization of the public school system knows no political boundaries. All it knows is a financial boundary. It's the wealthy. The D for the Democrats for Education Reform, those are all business-minded Democrats. Those are basically Republicans. So I would say that, yes, it's sort of Republican, but we have to throw in all those Democrats in name only who are actually market lovers. They think the market can cure everything. They are the actual term is neoliberal. They're neither.
Darcy has a question. Go ahead.
Yeah, so TFT, we're kind of running down on that half-hour thing right now. If you could just kind of sum up, if you could give us 3 main points of things that you would like to be done with school reform, just 3 short little sentences just to kind of give us a blurb of what exactly we need to do. Could you do that?
Yes. If we want to help students do better in school, we need to provide them with health care. So I'm an advocate of universal health care.
Okay.
We need to provide them with tests that don't have such high stakes attached to them so that people can learn from their mistakes as opposed to being punished for them. And books. These kids need books. We need to make sure no library ever gets shut down again, be it public or school. And we need to go into the most impoverished neighborhoods and just give away books every day, all the time.
Well,
I'm going to do that right now.
We can bring the bookmobile out to you, okay?
Yeah, the free bookmobile.
The free bookmobile. Where can we find more information on you, TFT?
You can find me at www.thefrustratedteacher.com.
Again, you are priceless. And I appreciate you coming on, and I'm so glad you're part of the network because, again, put us on our toes. But I think I need to book CT or somebody else to be involved in this. But, I mean, again, I really want people to email me at nhaley@totaltutor.org about the definition of TFT, poverty versus socioeconomic status, low socioeconomic status. Are they the same thing? So I thank you for calling, and we'll be in touch. Okay, and listen tonight at 8 o'clock and tell me what you think. I'm sure I'm not going to get a good email. You're listening to the Total Education Hour on the Total Education Network. We'll be back in 2 and 2, and that's 2 songs in 2 minutes. I was just trying to do something like one of my favorite shows. I like that. Okay, good. We'll be back.
I am Joan Rivers with an important announcement. Getting old is horrible, okay? Horrible.
You're not old. I mean, you're older, but you're not old.
You want to see old?
Oh, God.
Yes. Grow up, for goodness sakes. The last man to hit on me was an undertaker. I know where
I don't want to talk about
Well,
this,
you're going to
Mom.
have to talk about it. It's the future. It's coming right at us. And I'm not worried about dying. It's getting there. I mean, heaven is going to be fabulous. It's going to be a giant shopping mall, and there's going to be 20% off on everything except for me, 44.
You know, you're doing jokes, and I'm just not ready.
Well, you have to be ready. You have to listen to me. Look, there are things to discuss. They're going to be my needs. They're going to be my wants.
You know, Mom, I don't want to hear this. I just don't want to hear this. La, la, la,
Don't give me la, 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 la,
I
la.
don't. I can't. I can't do
Talk
this.
to your family about aging, even
No.
if they're not ready to listen. Come on, listen to me. Listen to me.
For the first time?
Yes, for the first time.
No matter who you are, it's not easy talking about aging. For help, go to voa.org/talk. A message from Volunteers of America.
There comes a time in life when you need government information.
And you just don't know which way to turn.
Well, there's a place you can go to put an end to your frustration.
It's a site that everyone should learn.
USA.gov.
Find your Social Security benefits online.
USA.gov.
Our list of jobs will put you on cloud nine.
USA.gov.
Shop auctions for a used minivan anytime.
USA.gov.
You can apply for a student loan.
USA.gov.
Get energy saving tips for your home.
USA.gov.
So great, you might just get carpal tunnel syndrome.
It's government made easy. For the people, USA.gov. For the people, USA.gov.
We're back to the Total Education Hour, and definitely go to the Frustrated Teacher's website and bug him. Start just hitting his blog up saying, are you kidding me? But again, he didn't come with anything. He came with stuff with Whitney Tilson. He let Whitney Tilson have it. But somehow tonight, he always wants to go to this poverty issue. And I don't agree with the whole kindergarten thing. Fact of the matter is every kindergarten is like that. And that's one of the problems with education is we have preschools that can't prepare kids for kindergarten. Exactly. And that always makes it so the kids are behind. So if we can figure out a way that preschool teachers can learn to teach, then we'd be in an all right situation.
You don't have to be a teacher to be a preschool teacher.
That's the problem. We got to train them, and that's it. Early intervention's a key. Exactly. Okay, so tell us about your guest, Darcy. Again, you're my publicist for the Total Education Hour. I'm really excited. And again, they always come from parts unknown. That's fine.
Yeah. Well, I have today my friend Lisa, who I absolutely love. I know everybody's going to love her too. Lisa works and lives in 2 different states. So, Lisa, how about you tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, and a little about your job?
Okay. Well, I am a Spanish teacher, and I live in Pennsylvania, but I work in Ohio. Mm-hmm. You know, I have my BS in education, and I'm working on my master's right now in secondary ed. But, yeah, living in PA with my husband and son, and working in Ohio.
Newborn baby?
Yeah, 4 months.
For you. So, you know, a lot of teachers say that they don't want to live near their schools because they don't want to run into their students at the grocery or because they don't want their students to know where they live. So many teachers are like, oh my gosh, this is the dream. You live nowhere near your students. Do you think that this is actually a good idea? I mean, you've experienced this almost to the extreme. How far do you live from your school?
I live an hour.
An hour?
I drive an hour.
An hour away.
Yeah, it's quite the drive. And yeah, I'd say, I mean, yeah, it's nice to go to the grocery store and be like, hey, I can go in, you know, sweats and a grungy t-shirt and be like, whatever, I'm not going to see anybody. But, you know, it does make it hard, too, at the same time because, you know, when I'm there, you know, I come in Monday morning, like, oh, did you hear what happened? You know, we won the game. And I'm like, yeah, good job. So that makes it hard. But, you know, I think really it's on part the kids, and then on part, you know, I'll say it. My teaching, I think I really have overcome that, though, at the same time, because we do have a good rapport. Like, if I was late to school because of bad weather, they'd poke their heads in and be like, hey, you got here okay.
Yeah.
And I'd be able to go back and be like, hey, you're late. I got here in time and you're late, so get here in time.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it has its advantages and disadvantages, but I'd like to be living near where I work.
Right. Yeah, and you live in Pennsylvania. So.
Yeah, so I mean, that's kind of my goal now, is to find a job in PA.
Exactly. So do you think that that's going to be better? Like, what do you see this turning out to be for you? Like, how close do you want to live to your school now that you've experienced an hour away?
I mean, I'll go up to a half hour, but really I would like to live within the same district or, a neighboring district. So, I mean, fairly close, because you do have those things. The sporting events I can't really go to, which is hard, or the band concerts or NHS, things like that. I can't do, or I have to set aside time.
Right.
Which is hard. And it's frustrating, because, I want to go to those things, and I want to do things, and I want to support the kids in that way.
Right. Yeah, that's fantastic.
So people listening, especially myself, that was commuting 50 minutes from Gibsonia to Oakland. So that's, again, rush hour and different things. But the hour, and then also I'm sure if TFT was listening in San Francisco, he'd say hour commute is a normal thing. Now, is it frustrate you to have to go an hour away? Would you rather have a shorter commute? Because what do you miss out on because you have to commute so far?
I feel like I miss out on the community aspect a lot, because I live in a different community. So it's like, basically, I have two separate lives, which, I mean, yes, in teaching you need to have your work life and your personal life, and I don't let my kids know a whole lot of my personal life, but at the same time, there is that community aspect that I miss. I miss, it's taking me longer to learn things about my students that I would just know by living there.
Right. Right. So, I mean, my thought is, again, I know the whole thing about the grocery store. My wife or myself, when I taught at St. Mary's, I mean, I would get cornered in the grocery store by 9 or 10 people when I was living in Shaler. Now living in Gibsonia, I don't run into as many families, but my wife does because she still teaches there. Okay. It's more of, I guess I have the celebrity status going to Shaler, but not going to Gibsonia. But I understand that. And I think that's a good thing in a way, at least to be away from your kids in certain ways. But Darcy's hinting something.
I am. She's
hinting something that we're not able to pull out, and we're going to pull it out, and that's for sure. So you can ask that question, Darcy.
Yeah. So I know we are kind of talking about that community thing. Here's the issue, though. The issue is that living in a completely different state from where you teach. So she doesn't get to take part in things that do affect her job-wise. And, yes. I mean, for example, we're not going to talk about the bill, so if you're listening and you're like, oh, we're going to talk about Bill 5, we're not going to talk about Senate Bill 5. But, for example, Senate Bill 5 in Ohio, this is something that affects her directly. Just to kind of catch you guys up a little bit, basically, this includes things, how do I explain this?
Basically, what it is the people who are in charge, or the people who are directly affected, can no longer make decisions.
Right.
For example, I would have absolutely no say in my class size.
Right.
I would have absolutely no say about pretty much anything that goes on in my classroom.
Right.
And that's that's really scary.
That's really scary, right? And it affects unions too. So it prevents unions from negotiating wages, of sick time, pension benefits. It eliminates automatic pay increases and bans strikes. And this is all kinds of things that as a teacher.
And it doesn't just affect teachers, though.
Right. It's teachers,
it
nurses.
Affects nurses.
Right.
It affects police officers, firefighters. I mean, yes, teaching is extremely important, but I mean, would you want is somebody going to take a bullet for you if they, can't negotiate their own wages, things like that?
So she can't vote on this.
Yeah.
Well, see, I think that's ridiculous, in that if you're teaching in that school, you should be able to vote on this.
Yeah.
And why should you be punished because you're deciding to commute? Because of the nepotism of the backwatered county districts, or even, let's say, school districts in general. They come up with their own rules, and this is a state rule then.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's a state rule. Right.
So what? They want people to live in Ohio, I guess. I don't know why, but why? So the fact is, no. Let's continue. So this frustrates you to the point that you are a frustrated teacher and you would want to say, I got to find a job in PA because this is not fair that I have my rights as a union and I'm not able to negotiate my contract.
Yeah.
I think
that's part of it, yes.
Part of it. So anything else, Darcy, because I'm kind of just listening into this and thinking.
Well, if you have more questions,
Yeah,
go for it.
I think, why are you here, Lisa? Again, that's the question. Are you going to say that Ohio needs to step up and take care of all their teachers, not just the ones that are from Ohio?
Yeah, they need to take care of all their teachers. Right. I mean, not just ones from Ohio, but, I mean, you know, somebody who's living on the border between Ohio and Kentucky. If somebody commutes over from Kentucky, they need to take care of them, too. They need to take care of everybody.
So I wonder what the law or the rules are in PA if you're commuting to another state, if you have that same thing. I don't know. And our research person might be able to figure that one out. So so you're saying you need this negotiation. You need to be able to do this. Now, I just think, well, how can you? Because you can't vote for it. So that's
Right,
one of the
I
problems.
can-
So that's where I see that maybe that's why they're doing it. Because if you can't vote in Ohio, why should you have a say in Ohio? So you think the union should be in a separate entity compared to the district or the state, in a way? Because that if you're not able to negotiate your contract with the union, then I don't see it as an important thing. Meaning, if you're not able to do that, why is the state dictating this? And because you can't, in the law is because you can't vote in Ohio. I think that's probably it.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, you know, this affects a lot of teachers. I know we're talking about you commute, but if you teach in a different state online, I mean, there are tons of people I know who teach for a lot of these schools that are online. All you have to do is be certified in that state. You don't have to live there. So all these laws that we're passing that regard all these different teachers, they're not getting to have any say. So why is this still at a state level when obviously our country is no longer state verified? We're no longer living by just these simple little borders. Why is it that things like this, where we're able to...
Here we go. Here goes
So when we're able to be a country, a single unified country, why are we still saying, well, no, this state border is here, and since you live 5 minutes on this side, you can't vote on this?
See, I mean, I think that the reason is that unions should be separated from the state. That's the thing. But if it is involved in the state and you don't vote for that state, then maybe that's why. That's where I see this situation. And that's why I see what Ohio's doing. But I don't understand why the union isn't speaking up and saying, well, so you've gone to the union about this, right?
Yes.
What is their answer to this question?
I mean, we're fighting it as best we can, but I don't know.
You're fighting it.
Yes.
And so what Darcy's bringing about the states and the United States. So I guess you didn't like what happened historically then.
Oh, I never liked what happened.
So the Articles of Confederation was the right way to go.
No, Neil.
No.
Come on now.
No, I'm just saying.
I'm just saying, if we're going to get into this unified way of seeing our country, why are we still saying, no, there's still all these little tiny things that we need to do state-wise? I mean, what are we that petty of a country that we can't come together on some things?
Exactly. So we're going to take a break, and then we're going to consider to say if we're going to discuss this or go to another news topic, because the one point I'm at is ready to go political, and that means that we'll go into the whole situation why states do have those rights. But you're listening to the Till Education Hour on the Till Education Network, and we'll be back in just a moment to finish up the topic with Lisa.
The Sydney Sider's life is all about the beach and the harbour. You can be in the city 1 minute and then the next you can be at Bondi Beach or hiking around the harbour. And I think everyone in Australia has noticed that it's been getting hotter and drier. We've had the worst drought in 1,000 years. Recently we had a huge dust storm come over Sydney, bringing 75,000 tonnes of dust an hour, which coated the whole city. That was a consequence of the drought, which dried out whole areas of land, so it just can't hold the dust down anymore. The Opera House could even be vulnerable to climate change from storm surges and from sea level rise. It's really worrying, as a lot of the Australian population lives really close to the coast. We're the last generation that can solve the climate crisis, so we need to do it not only for ourselves, but For my children and my grandchildren, I want them to be able to enjoy the same sort of Australia that I've enjoyed. The peace, the prosperity, and beautiful Sydney.
And now, another adventure with Savings Man.
And with 0% down, all you have to pay on this mortgage is the interest.
Now that's affordable.
Are you sure?
Savings Man.
Watch out, you two. This is not your typical mortgage guy. He's really a subprime mate. Out you go. Monkeying around with the wrong mortgage can destroy your dreams.
You're right, Savings Man.
Remember, if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is.
For more tips and tools, visit choosetosave.org today.
We're back to the Total Education Hour, and I've decided to kind of look at the theme of TFT. Lisa, and we've gone political in a lot of ways, but now I want to go back to this thing because, again, I'm sure TFT likes this topic a ton. I think that he's a big fan of this, and I should text him right now, or I mean, I should email him and see if he's checking the computer to know he can listen to this streaming live. It is a generation. You're on a national show at a real radio station. That is not... It's a different thing than just internet radio. California Board okays parent trigger rules. The California Board of Education on Wednesday, and Darcy Love states, Wednesday unanimously approved a new set of rules giving parents more power to force changes at poorly performing public schools. Poverty. The regulations were approved during a packed meeting in Sacramento. Parents who had taken buses from across the state erupted in cheers. The rules will allow a majority of parents or guidelines at low-performing schools to petition school districts for major changes, from adding programs or converting to a charter school to shutting down the campus or firing the principal. I wish the TFT was listening to this. I wish I would have gone to this one. Darcy, what do you think of this idea?
Crack the whip. Seriously, someone needs to be stepping up, and I am so glad that they are. It is about time.
I'm sending him right now. Listen live at WRCT.org. I should just have him a call again. But now, what is your thought on this? Anything, Lisa?
I'm not really sure at the moment.
You're not sure at the moment.
Yeah.
Basically, it's giving this the power of parents. It's schools that are failing.
Okay.
That TFT says because of poverty. That now parents have the control to change things in California.
Well, obviously these parents care. That was another thing that we were pointing out, that a lot of these parents don't care. They were there.
The charter schools, charter schools don't work. Remember that.
Right.
So that school vouchers don't
I'm
work.
sorry, can I point out that charter schools did not work in the year 2003, and since the 2009 we have been seeing a drastic climb due to parents caring. Another thing that we noticed was that the longer students actually stay in the charter schools, the better they get. The big thing with charter schools is that it's a change of pace, a change of environment, and change of dynamics. So if the students are not used to it, just like when we send them to college and haven't taught them how to study, they get culture shock and they don't do well. Let's think about our first years of college. How many people actually do as well their first year as they do by their last?
Not because they don't prepare them, and that's because we go back to public education as a watering down system, and we're not going to go to the test scores in this. We're going to go to the fact that teachers aren't setting high expectations for their kids. And what charter schools do they do? Yeah, there are some podunk charter schools out there that were poorly run, that they were not organized business-wise well, and yeah, they maybe wouldn't score well in tests. But the ones
by
like
podunk,
KIPP,
you don't mean poverty, right?
No, I don't mean poverty. No, okay, podunk, we'll add that to our definition of three things.
What is podunk?
So podunk, poverty, or low socioeconomic status. They all mean the same thing.
They're all
different, they're all different.
They all have
shades of gray. So that you have to understand that. So I think this is great. I think that parents, remember, they don't care in low socioeconomic areas, but kids with poverty do care. Parents with poverty do care, but low socioeconomic status.
I'm sorry. I've seen so many kids who just said, oh, mommy or daddy's just going to get me a job. I don't have to do well. Who don't care. because mommy or daddy's rich.
So I would just say, and this is not going to be a good thing,
not.
it's the system. It's the system. They're working the system, public education. As Darcy was telling me off air about something, I won't mention names or anything, or schools or anything, but the fact is that they're paying certain people's education, and they don't care. So even in a college level, they don't care. So how are we going to change things? Remember, what I think TFT was saying, till we pour in another $1 billion in education, we aren't going to make a difference, so that let's leave the poor teachers alone. They're getting hurt, so let's go to this SOS rally, save our schools. Darcy, I'm sure you're going to be there on July 31st.
If only,
save our schools.
If only we would pick one thing that we were saving our schools from, because there are about 50 different topics.
So
otherwise, I would be there.
So think about the whole save our schools, but they don't have a topic. And listen to my show in 10 minutes on Blog Talk Radio, and you will see on the CB Media Network, because again, the Teleeducation Network goes everywhere, that I literally ripped out this whole save our schools. Now, TFT was thinking about taking a bus there to D.C., but he just decided no. But Bronx Teacher will be there.
Of course
he will drive there, and he will be saying, I know what's going on. And remember, this is just ridiculous. TFT's done the talk show circuit this week, and I just don't know. And what Dr. Stephen Gaffanti said, and this is, again, Dr. G, we love you. He said 2/3, the only thing I have to say is 2/3 of public school students can't read. End of discussion. That's the problem. 2/3 in California. So I wonder why the board is finally deciding that they could take care of this. So, Darcy, what's your thought?
You know what? I don't know anymore. I swear, every time we turn around, somebody's saying, oh, we're going to do this big radical thing. And they either don't follow through, they don't listen to the people that they said we're going to listen to, or, it's just, no, you know what? Everybody's just putting up a big front. I would love to see if they actually follow through with this.
Do you think it'll happen?
I don't know. I mean, the parents are there, so maybe, the power of many will...
So, frustrated teacher, if you are listening, because again, you're at the computer in your chat room already writing, ready to write a blog. Yeah. If you're listening right now, you can call 412-621-WRCT or 9728 if you don't understand the call letters to basically debate this whole thing. I don't know why it just didn't pop up and say, oh my, California board. So I like this, first of all, that you're looking at from adding programs or converting to a charter school to shutting down the campus or firing the principal. I like the word firing the principal. I think I like those words more than anything in the world. And I'm so glad I'm not working for a principal anymore, and especially my last principal. But the simple fact of the matter is that we, as parents, need to take back our schools. Instead of save our schools, let's not have the teachers who are paying their salaries, and that was the funniest thing that Ken Pettigrew said to TFT. If we decide to go ourselves and go all the way and march to Washington, D.C. as parents, saying we need to save our schools from bureaucratic paperwork, from unions, and from all of these things, then we have the great Save Our Schools March. So I told everyone on the show that'll air again that I was doing last night, go and follow this on Twitter and just start tweeting them. Start tweeting them saying, oh, you are so impoverished, teachers, going to SOS to save our schools. We feel so bad for you. We feel bad for you that you have tenure in 3 years. We feel bad for you that you're not able to, and I think I do have a caller probably. We feel bad for you that you're not able to do these things. So what's your thought, Darcy?
Neil, it's not take back our schools, because then it'd be TBOS, and that's just not as catchy.
Okay, so do we have, Chris, do we have anyone on the line, or are you just looking at me? You can't believe what I'm saying. Okay. So now, Lisa, what is your thought?
Well, I think it's good that parents want to be involved. Mm-hmm. They want to add programs and, possibly fire principals or whoever. But I guess at the same time, though, I wonder, even with their collective voice, it comes back down to, do they know what's best?
See,
they know what's best for their child. Yes. But what about, collectively?
See, I think you're right.
Do you see what I'm getting at, sort of?
But see, the parents, but the fact is somebody has to stop this. stop the insanity, as I was saying. I was.
But you don't stop insanity by starting new insanity.
What would
That's
be the,
another
what,
part of it.
What would be the new insanity?
I mean, this can go one of two ways. Either it's going to be an organized, well-planned, well-thought-out way of actually bringing in these outside, well, I don't want to say outside, these voices of the parents, or it's going to be one madhouse faces another. I mean, if you...
And honestly, that's what I think it's going to be. It's going to be one madhouse versus another madhouse.
Exactly.
And it's just going to become a mess.
That's because California is messed up in all ways.
Well, that's a little different topic.
Let them try it first,
so am I
going
to get some good mail again for California? Now, so this Save Our Schools. I'm going to ask Lisa this question because Darcy and I now are, something that I am finally in the private sector, and even though I was but I was still employed by a school. What is your thought of the Save Our Schools? Do you think it's a good thing to do? To march on Washington, D.C., they have a great plan.
I'm not too familiar with Save Our Schools, I will say. I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing. Being a teacher, I should be more familiar with it.
It's okay.
But
so you have to remember to wear red for public education. That was remember 6 months ago, Darcy.
Oh,
yeah, wear red for public education. I'll wear blue for public education.
I do remember that.
The blue of and Chris is writing on the board for something. I don't know. He's turning around and around and around. He says 2/3 of kids in California in poverty.
Greater than 2/3.
Greater than 2/3. And that means they can't read either. So the question I have to ask Darcy is, you're telling me that even if it's the most dangerous school, we can't teach kindergartners? We can't teach first graders? We can't teach second graders how to read?
Reading is really hard, I mean, you can't expect preschool teachers to take the time to sit down with these students who they're given every single day as the job of teaching them, numbers and letters and things like that. You can't expect them to teach these children how to read if they're not teachers.
So the books, remember, let's get the bookmobile out, and
Yes,
we're going to go in and we're going to hand out a bunch of books. Even though I think that maybe let's decide give them laptops instead.
Oh, that's a good plan.
I mean the books. I think the books would end up going in a fire or something. Let's give them laptops.
That's where we're going anyways, right?
Yeah. So I mean the books are definitely well used and all those different things.
We're talking about how impoverished they are. They need the fire for warmth, so they'll burn the books. I think that we're going from one extreme to another.
So, but I mean, the whole thing, this California thing, it'll be interesting to look at. But again, Save Our Schools. You're reading it now. Is it saying anything? If they had something to say, if you have something to say that really in the Save Our Schools, and that's what I want response. And I guess I'm going to book the frustrated teacher to answer that question maybe Wednesday night to respond to my show tonight on Blog Talk. One of my shows on Blog Talk again, because I am the king of education media, and that is what's happening to me. A television, radio, internet, syndicated channels everywhere. So the fact is, how are we going to save our schools? And give me, eliminate tests. Keep tenure. Everything will be fine. They'll be reading quickly. And it'll be great. What do you think, Darcy?
I just want to know what everybody's chant is going to be. Because if we can't decide on one specific thing to save our schools from, what are we... I mean, you have to have a chant, and everybody has to have a common sign of some sort.
So save our schools is here, and I also...
Are we just going to chant save our schools?
Also, my last topic I talked about is that it costs $7 million to fire a teacher or something ridiculous like that. So fire the bad teachers. Train the green teachers. Then you'll save your schools. Hire administrators that know how to run a business or run an organization. Can't even run their classroom. That's the problem. It's not that we have to look at poverty. Yeah, poverty has something to do with it. But in other countries, if we're going to keep saying poverty, why is it 2/3 in California? Over 2/3. Now that means that 2/3 of California are impoverished. Oh, I'm sorry, low socioeconomic status. So I am just going, but I got to finish this up. I want to thank my producer, Chris Palmer. I want to thank Lisa for coming on the program. Darcy, thank you, frustrated teacher. You're so great. And then Christina, my television producer. I hope everyone has a fantastic week, and I'll talk to you again Friday night, 7 o'clock, or at TotalTutor.org always. Good night.